Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Welcome to Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. I'm Joe Coe, Director of Education and Digital Strategy at the Global Healthy Living Foundation. I'm also a migraine patient, have been so for 20 years, so I know what it's like to live with this disease. This week, I'm speaking with Alicia Torborg, a dear friend who's also a migraine patient and the Executive Director of the Association of Migraine Disorders. It's an amazing organization focused on migraine research, education, and advocacy. I'm here with a really good friend and powerful leader in the migraine community, Alicia. Alicia, how are you feeling today?
I am feeling well today, as a matter of fact.
That's great. And can you tell us a bit about what you do and your connection to migraine?
So I've had migraine for most of my life. It started when I was about 10 years old. It's come and gone and taken different shapes over the years. And as I got older, they were no longer calling them migraines. They were calling them tension headaches. And they were debilitating. They were every single day. At one point I was going on about 5 months of chronic pain every single day and nothing was helping. I saw a bunch of different doctors, a neurologist, homeopath, chiropractors. I did yoga, changed my diet, did everything I could possibly think of, and nothing was helping. So finally I said, let me talk to an ear, nose, and throat doctor and get allergy tested. Maybe there's something I'm allergic to. And he had asked me a ton of questions and finally had said, there are definitely still migraines. And we should treat them as migraines. So, we started a different regimen of medications. Everything is you try and see what works. And, some things helped and some didn't. But I worked closely with him as a patient-doctor relationship over the past few years. But after about a year, I had said to him that I was going to be changing careers. My background was in finance and banking, and I was going to go out on my own and do some program management. And he was asking me more about what I did, and he said that he needed an executive director. So here it is 7 years later. And if you had ever asked me 5 years ago, where do you think you're going to be in 5 years? I never would have said in the nonprofit world in migraine ever. But here I am, and it's been such a rewarding, terrific ride. I still have migraines though.
I think many of us can relate to that. Tell us about the Association of Migraine Disorders. What's your mission and what do you do?
Yeah, so they were established in 2012. And like I said, he's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So many people say, why is he leading this organization? Why would an otolaryngologist be doing this? But he was seeing so many patients that were coming in saying, I've got to have sinusitis. I've been on antibiotics, but they're not helping. I get scans and they show I'm clear, but they kept being treated for sinus infections when in fact, so many of them were migraines. So he started this organization, this foundation in 2012, and our focus is to expand the understanding of migraine through research, education, and awareness. So we've got different programs under each one of those pillars.
I am a big fan of your organization and supporter. You do amazing work. Can you talk a little bit about the comorbidity project that you recently launched?
So we recently hired, she's an RN and she's got a background in writing and an interest for just researching. So we have found over 75 comorbid conditions that are common to have with migraine, ranging from endometriosis to anxiety and depression, even Alzheimer's. But there are 75 of these conditions. So what we've done is written about the correlation between these two and then given suggestions on what type of doctor you should see when you have both of these conditions, medications you should consider and avoid. But we also align with allied partner organizations. So we realize that we may not be the expert with depression or mental illness. So we engage with these allied partners and work with them. They're all thrilled just to be working with us, that there's, more of an interest in these conditions.
Many of you may not know, Alicia and I are from the same county in New York. It is the smallest county in New York. And that means that we share a special bond. And I got to live that bond with Alicia and some of her colleagues at the Association of Migraine Disorders during a hike in Scottsdale where I thought they were taking me out to kill me. It was a very intense hike. I said, yeah, I could do that. It was an actual hike. In New York, when I think hiking, I think like an incline, you go up a little bit, in the forest. This was a pretty intense hike. Can you talk about your history doing this at the American Headache Society meeting and what was the hike like that you took me on? You could explain it
Yes.
better than I can.
So several years ago, we started this hike with the founder of AMD, who happens to be about 6'4", very long legs, and my other partner at AMD, who was also blessed with height. I am not. I'm 5'2" on a good day if I really stand up tall. So I went for half the hike with them, but I was with another person who just wasn't quite comfortable going to the top, which I think is equivalent to 180 stories. I would have to fact check that. I'm not positive. But so I had gone halfway up once before. So then I got Joe and I said, Joe, we have this fun day and it's adventure. It's a great adventure. Come with us. You're going to have a blast. So Joe did. And I think you and I are probably comparable in size. We went up this hike with these other two, and I would say they would be qualified as athletes. I mean, they're both pretty athletic. You and I are in good shape, Joe. But so we went up this hike that was perilous. I mean, it was climbing hand over hand, crawling up rocks. It was above my skill set for sure.
We did it, and I did it in running shoes. Like really wrong choice for the hike. I was thinking New York hike. Now I
Right.
have hiking shoes for next time. Just so the audience can really feel what I felt. I get to it's mountain. Camelback was the name of the
Camelback.
mountain. And there are signs that are like, it's not too late to turn back. You could die. And I'm like, this is really comforting. But then I said, you know what? If this is my time and I'm gonna go out on a hike, I'll be with good people in a beautiful place, and it's meant to be. So we did it, and it was really cool and a great bonding experience, and something that I definitely cherish and brought me closer with your organization, because I literally felt like you guys had my life in your hands, and I
Yeah.
trusted you, and you did a great job with it.
Oh, I had such a great time. Really fond memories.
What are some things that you have learned in the past 7 to 8 years of doing this work professionally? You've been a patient, you've been a person living with migraine for so long. Professionally, what has been some of the most rewarding moments for you in this work?
Hmm. I would say over the past few years, I joined this council, Disparities in Healthcare Advisory Council. Um, and they would each month, they would have experts come in and really teach us about different cultures. And I was so eager to learn. I feel like I've lived somewhat of a sheltered life. Some would say a privileged life. Um, that I had so much to learn, but I would also come to these meetings saying, I can't change the world. I'm only one person, and it's easy to get overwhelmed and put your hands up and say, I can't do anything. But I would go to these meetings and say, what's the one thing I can do? What is the one thing I can walk away tomorrow and do something personally or professionally? And I realized there were so many things I could do professionally, to help. And you think, like, with this little organization, this little nonprofit, what can you do? But it's inviting scientists, people of color. You need to have a seat at the table. You need to be involved in research. We need more scientists that are from diverse backgrounds, and less people that look like me, and more color, more backgrounds. So one of the things that we had done is we created this. They're called healthcare provider kits, and they're really to help clinicians diagnose and treat migraine. So I know with me, and like I said, I've good health insurance. I've always had good employment. I live in a nice area. It was really hard for me to find a good doctor. So imagine being Indigenous and living on a reservation. You can imagine how difficult it would be to find appropriate health care. Imagine not having medical benefits or a good job or a car to drive yourself to it. I mean, There are so many people that obviously have so much less than we do. So we really made it our goal is to get these free educational tools out into the hands of clinicians, not just doctors, but nurses and psychiatrists and dentists and people who work in clinics and emergency rooms and on reservations. Get these materials out to these people to help diagnose and treat people, which, by the way, migraine is so much more prevalent in these communities as well.
I loved what you said, Alicia, about the one thing that we can do. I think that's something that we all can think about in different ways. Um, we talk about really hard topics working in healthcare. People are feeling isolated, alone. People are struggling to get access. People are struggling once they find a good doctor to be able to afford and find the right treatments. So we often are fighting all these different battles and putting out all these fires. And as advocates, I think it's important to take a step back like you did and said, you know what? I could focus on one thing. And what's the one thing that I can be impactful and do? And I think that is a really good way to tackle these larger problems, because your one thing adds on to my one thing, adds on to the National Headache Foundation's one thing, and the American Migraine Foundation's
Right.
one thing. And it's just a way that we all build and do this work collaboratively. And I think that's a really smart and sensitive way to approach it. So you didn't talk about one of my favorite programs that you guys do, which is ShadesForMigraine. Light sensitivity has always been one of my issues. Even when I'm not having an attack, I'm light sensitive. You see right now, I feel fine. I have all of my lights off, just natural lighting. So that when I came across ShadesForMigraine doing this work at Global Healthy Living Foundation, I was like, that is a cool event. You ask people to wear sunglasses to raise awareness around migraine. Can you talk a little bit more about that event, how it started, and how many people you reach?
Sure. So, and I'll back up even a little step before that is so many of our programs, like you've heard me talk a little bit about research, a little bit about education. They are so important to us. They are our pillars. And to my core, I believe they're just so important. They're serious programs, though. You don't get a lot of laughs in those programs. Like it's good, serious work. ShadesForMigraine, it's a fun program. It's easy to participate. And the only ask is wear a pair of sunglasses, take a picture, share it on social media. And it can be anyone. It could be kids in a school. It could be your parents in an assisted living or, anywhere. It could be a headache clinic. It's just really raising awareness about migraine. So we have these purple sunglasses, which you've seen. I know you have some. They are kind of the signature symbol for it. But we say any, sunglasses will do. But we recently unloaded 15,000 pairs of sunglasses. So now I can add manual labor to my resume.
You're getting ready for the hikes and all the physical activities by lifting the
Right.
sunglasses. It all ties together.
Right. But it is such a fun campaign. A few years ago, prior to COVID, we all went down to Times Square and we've gone to the Today Show. We try to get on the Today Show every year. We're out there in the square first thing in the morning. And, we've met Al Roker and Hoda and just have always had a great time. But we went to Times Square a few years ago and handed out 1,000 pairs of sunglasses. And we brought a local newscaster with us and they were on tour buses and just interviewing people on the streets. And it was amazing. People were crying. Some people we were interviewing were actually crying because they could not believe that there was so much attention to a disease that really does not get a lot of attention.
I love the event. It somewhat inspired a conversation I had with a fashion designer that we work with for New York Fashion Week around arthritis, Michael Kaluba and his line Tumbler and Tipsy. I said to him last year, I was like, you need to do something for migraine. Can you design a shirt? And he's like, I'll design a pair of sunglasses. So he designed a pair of sunglasses for the fashion show last year
Uh-huh.
that I got to wear. It was remote modeling, so everyone modeled from their locations because it was during the middle of the pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, and ShadesForMigraine inspired that because my migraine and sun and light and sensitivity and sunglasses, that's something that people can relate to. And you guys have done an amazing job in amplifying and creating this really fun, like you said, grassroots campaign that's super accessible. Most people have a pair of sunglasses that they could grab and put on. There isn't, a large entry to participate. You just
Right.
do it, raise awareness, and feel good and feel proud of living and thriving with a chronic disease. So
Yeah,
I love Shades for Migraine. I'm a big fan. Where is the website? ShadesForMigraine.org.
it is.
So I encourage folks to go to ShadesForMigraine.org and definitely support that program. It's a really great one.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. And we have people participating internationally. So in many different countries, and people just love to be part of it.
I meant to ask this earlier. I like to start the episode with if I'm talking to someone that has migraine, if they can remember what their worst migraine attack was like. So for you, what was that like? How did you feel? What did you think?
I can remember back to being a child. So I was about 10 years old, and they would come and they were so terrible. And they would start with an aura. And I don't really get auras that often anymore, but they would start with an aura, and then I would get this unbelievable pain. This was a recent realization in my life. Teachers used to ask me, "Are you being bullied?" And I would say no, because back in New York, you never told on the kids that were bullying you, but I totally was. I was being bullied and I was being chased home from school. And I wonder if that had anything to do with like that anxiety. I wonder if it had anything to do with the actual migraines or not. But it's funny, I never would have told on anybody either. Now, as an adult, I'm thinking, gosh, if I told on them, they would have gotten in so much trouble. These were like New York City cops' kids, like strict parents. Those kids would have gotten in so much trouble had their parents known that they were chasing this little girl home from school. Those were the worst. Like emotionally, there were terrible times, but the physical pain and the nausea and the sickness that I would endure. I can remember begging my parents to take me to the hospital or to the doctor so they could put me to sleep. And they would give me some kind of a shot that would literally put me to sleep.
Wow, that's really, well, I'm sorry that you experienced that as a young person. And we fail our young people as a society by allowing a climate that creates bullying. And it happens to this day. That concept and adverse childhood events and trauma is something that is really of interest to me. I wrote a little bit about it in a Medium piece that I published a couple months ago around language and stigma. And I too wondered, like you do as an adult looking back, did being bullied as a gay kid in Rockland County, did that create more stress and make me, if I was predisposed to having migraine,
Mhm.
have me have migraine attacks earlier or more intense? And I wonder that, and there needs to be a lot more research on that connection. And it's something that I've publicly called for researchers to look at. I know our organization, as does yours, would like to see some more factual as opposed to anecdotal, because this is
Mhm.
us, bringing our stories here around that. Because I think that a lot of people share that experience. And if you are living in a culture that is putting you down, or if you're being bullied, or if you're not feeling safe and secure, what impact does that have on you if you are predisposed to having migraine?
Mhm.
That's a really interesting research question that should be addressed.
Yeah, I imagine there's a connection between stress and anxiety and migraine or other diseases too.
Was there
Yeah.
anything that I didn't ask that you would like to cover?
I always say advice to people is to always be looking for something. I know with me, I always try to think like, why do I have a migraine right now? Or why am I in such a bad cycle? Is it something I'm doing, eating, stress, something? Am I doing it? Is it environmental? I'm always looking for reason. And sometimes there's just not a reason, or maybe there is, and we just don't know. And we may never know what the reason is, just your luck or genetics or whatever it is. But I am always looking for the next solution, something that works. And it's combination therapy. Maybe it's glasses, maybe it's neuromodulation devices on top of medications and supplements. But I know it can be so easy to get frustrated and just sit in the dark and just be like, gosh, this is my life. That's one piece of advice. My other advice, and this helps me so much, is, and not everyone can do this all the time too, and I totally get that. If you're vomiting, you're not going to go out and go for a walk. You can't. It's not reasonable. But I can't tell you how many times I've really felt bad. Like the pain is bad. I'm in a dark place. And I make myself go out and go for a walk. And then I'm like, I could lay in bed and that's all I think about. Or I could be outside in nature with my dogs. And at least I'm enjoying that walk with my dogs or my kids or just by myself. And it takes my mind off it a little bit. And sometimes the endorphins just help. So those are the two things that really seem to help me.
Really great pieces of advice. We discussed a little bit of the second part in an episode that we did with Dr. Lindsay Weitzel on outfoxing your migraine. And it surprised me that she was talking about how she or someone that she works with will listen to music or go under their covers and watch a TV show and listen to it if they had the light sensitivity or vice versa, to distract their mind from some of the pain. And it seems so counterintuitive, but I've definitely tried those tactics if I'm not feeling great, and I'm able to go out for a walk or listen to music or do something that I know makes me feel good. And if you have to stop, you stop. And I've certainly done that too. But your point, Alicia, is the trying. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that we need to provide space for ourselves to give ourselves the gift of doing all that we can to make ourselves the best possible version of who we are. And that comes in all different ways.
Right. I agree.
Well, this was so nice. Thank you for being so open and sharing, and really appreciate your organization and all the hard work that all of you do day in and day out to support migraine patients and the people that love us. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's important work and I'm so passionate about it. So I feel blessed that I'm able to do this. So thank you for listening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. If you like this episode, please give it an honest 5-star rating and subscribe so you never miss another one. I'm Joe Coe, and I will see you next time.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.